Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 100. I'm Alex Kozora, and with me is Dave Bryan, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for listening so much. Dave, 100 episodes.
Go 100. That's lit, right?
Okay. And that is the conclusion of Episode 100, because I'm going to exit stage left.
We're keeping it 100 today.
All right. Yeah, Juju, you are not. That's
No, I am not. No, I'm not.
Well, I can't think of any better segue than to jump immediately into Steelers news off of that, so let's do that, because we actually have a ton of stuff to talk about, and I'm going to try to keep this show under our now normal 2-hour show.
Good luck.
Yeah, I don't like my odds here, but let's start with the Steelers visits, because really the last couple days, this week, we have a lot of the official confirmed visits coming in, several a day, so there's a lot to talk about there. You know, before was a lot of reports, now we have a lot of confirmation. And so, Dave, I mean, I don't know what direction you want to go in. You want to just read the list of names that have come in? What do you want to go with this thing?
Yeah, just read the total list of the guys that have been in so far.
Okay, the ones that we know that have been confirmed are, and I'm just going to go by the way I have it listed positionally on our tracker on Steelers Depot, are Ohio State running back Mike Weber, running back from Penn State, Miles Sanders. Running back from Alabama, Damian Harris. Running back from Florida, Jordan Scarlett. Running back from the U, Travis Homer. Tight end from Notre Dame, Elise Mack. Wide receiver from Notre Dame, Miles Boykin. Wide receiver from UMass, Andy Isabella. Wide receiver from Oregon, Dylan Mitchell. Outside linebacker from Oklahoma State, Jordan Brailford. Inside linebacker from Akron, Ulysses Gilbert III. Inside linebacker from Texas, Gary Johnson. Inside linebacker from West Virginia, David Long Jr. Inside linebacker from Washington, Ben Burr-Kirven. Safety from Maryland, Darnell Savage Jr. Safety from Oregon, Hugo Amadi. Safety from West Virginia, Dravin Askew Henry. And cornerback from Central Michigan, Sean Bunting. Long and Sanders are local. There's a couple other that have been reported but not confirmed yet. But that's the list. So that gives us, not including the local guys, 17 either official or reported of the allotted 30.
Yeah, and Askew Henry also a local too from West Virginia, a guy that's off my radar. I haven't really looked at anything on him. I know he's a cousin of Darrell Revis. So that was a little tidbit that I found there. So yeah, you know, a lot of these names we already kind of knew were coming in ahead of time. But you know, you look at this. I probably need to study a little bit more running back tape. I think obviously we have write-ups on a lot of these guys already up on SteelersDepot.com. It certainly looks like they're going to be in the market for a running back at some point. And boy, they you know, you look at the projected kind of rounds these guys are, I don't know what, from second on, right? You know, you look at the Alabama running back Damian Harris. Where's he supposed to go? Second, third round, right around in there.
I would guess solid day 2.
And then kind of Miles Sanders is, you know, another kind of top running back, I think, in this year's class as well too. Now, being as how he's local, you know, why not bring these local kids in?
Right.
You know, they're freebies and you know, why? And I think he's a freebie because of where he's from, right?
Right. Penn State, to be clear, Penn State is not a local school, but Miles Sanders is from Woodland Hills. He was born in Pittsburgh. So if you're born in the area, you played high school in the area, you're considered local. So let's to clarify that's the reason why he's a local visit.
Miles Boykin, we knew he was coming in. Andy Isabella, kind of an interesting name there, just because, you know, more kind of, I think, from the position that he plays, more of a slot guy, I think. Dylan Mitchell, I think you wrote him up. I don't know too terribly much about him other than what you wrote up on there. Obviously, the 4 inside linebackers, probably not a huge surprise there. Those, who knows, those might be safety nets, you know.
Yep.
If they don't get a guy like maybe Devin Bush to fall to him in the first round. Darnell Savage, you know, is a guy I think a lot of people ought to have circled right now. He is a guy that I really think they have a lot of interest in. I think could potentially be the the team's second or third round draft pick, depending on how things break there with him. So obviously, you look back over history and people say, well, do these pre-draft visits mean anything? Well, to some degree, yes. A few of these are likely to end up being drafted. A few others will likely end up being signed maybe as undrafted free agents. And then, another 4 years from now or whatnot, we might be talking about some of these guys as free agents from other teams. So it's always important, overall, 2, 3, 4 maybe might end up being Steelers this year.
Yeah, I posted the list yesterday. I can try to pull it up, but normally, now last year was a bit of an exception, but normally there is a pretty strong correlation between pre-draft visitors and whoever gets selected ultimately. Last year, only one pre-draft visit was drafted by Pittsburgh, Marcus Allen, but they had 3 undrafted free agents: Matthew Thomas, Quadri Henderson, granted was local, and Greg Gilmore, and plus they signed Broken Roback to a futures deal this year. But I think in the previous years it's been about, I don't have the number here, but it's been about 3 to 4 of the pre-draft visitors. So yeah, there's a pretty strong correlation there, and as you mentioned, in free agency down the line, one of these guys probably becomes the Pittsburgh Steeler the way that Steven Nelson or Dante Moncrief did, this year.
And also, we're waiting. We are expecting Texas defensive end Charles Omenihu to come in, and Ben Banigou, the edge outside linebacker from TCU, to make it in at some point. Are those the only 2 that have been reported that have not come in yet?
Yes. Looking up at my list right now, Omenihu and Banigou are the only 2.
All right, so that's where we stand. I would expect maybe another corner or 2 maybe to come in at some point here. Maybe another tight end or 2, maybe another wide receiver or so. So we're about halfway through the 30 number right now, and I don't know if they're going to bring anybody in on Friday or not. It doesn't seem like in the past they've had a long history to bring them in on Friday, but we'll probably know by the end of this podcast whether or not that happens.
To circle back to running back, because we had this discussion briefly on the previous show, and then they brought in, I think, a couple more running backs. I think Scarlett and Homer came in. I'm not saying it's going to happen in round 3, but I think at the start of round 3, you at least have to entertain the possibility that they'll take a running back, and I think they'll take one early day 3, if not round 3. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I don't think you can rule it out, right?
Yeah.
Best on the board situation. Maybe that's what happens. And look, James Conner, he's obviously, you would think entrenched right now. But behind him, and look, I know Jalen Samuels had a nice rookie season and, played a lot more than any of us I probably imagined when he was drafted he would play. But, there's still room for potential upgrade at that position, or at least some competition there. And, I think Jalen Samuels has a good shot, obviously, of still making the roster. But can you bring in somebody else to compete for that second running back spot? Yeah, I think you can.
Yeah, and that's the point I made on the last show, was that I don't think Samuel's existence stops you from drafting running back if you really like somebody, especially kind of a pure, mostly runner, when Samuel's just kind of a do-it-all kind of guy. So I think certainly there's a very, very good chance they draft a running back by early day 3, 4th, 5th round, because that's what they're doing their homework on. Weber, Sanders, Harris, Scarlett, Homer are all kind of late day 2, early day 3 kind of guys. So I don't think we're going to see that just token 7th round draft pick on a running back anymore.
Another thing we need to throw out there too, remember, James Conner has missed quite a few games already during his brief NFL career here. So that might be weighing on the back of their minds as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Dave, so that's the pre-draft visit list. You can check it out on Steelers Depot. We're going to continue to update it there. Again, 17 of the 30 that we know of. Again, not counting all the local guys as well. All right, where do we want to go here? Let's go to the AAF because that's, some news both for the league and then for Pittsburgh's interest. The league, I guess you can say it hasn't folded, but it's certainly one step away from folding. League has suspended play. They're not going to finish out the season. They're going to try to regroup, I guess, find new investor. We can go down the whole rabbit hole of why it happened if you'd like, but for Pittsburgh's standpoint, they are bringing in at least one safety because players are now free to sign with NFL clubs right away. The league has announced that. Tyson Graham Jr., I believe, has a visit scheduled with the Steelers. He was a safety for the Atlanta Legends and I think was closer at the top of the league lead in tackles.
Yes, he was, and boy, you go back and you pulled some of the plays up and went back. He was all around the football for sure, and he's a former undrafted free agent. I think of the Colts back a few years ago. Didn't make their roster in 2017, and then last year signed on with the Atlanta Falcons and played the preseason and obviously spent camp with them and failed to make their roster as well. So an interesting name. He had been placed on IR with a neck injury, but I reached out to him and he told me that his neck's fine now and that he was flying into Pittsburgh last night for a physical and all today. So we'll see if by the end of the day maybe we have a new safety on the roster here.
Yeah, and we'll see if he's being 100% honest about that neck injury. It's a little concerning. Neck injury a couple weeks ago, got placed on IR, and now he's healthy, which, hey, maybe he is. Maybe they just something they had to do. But, yeah, certainly all these guys have to go through physicals after playing that, after playing, 7-8 weeks of the AAF. But disappointing about the league, though, isn't it, Dave? Were you still watching games during the last couple weeks of the AAF?
I was, but not as intently as I was, say, through the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. And, it makes you kind of wonder in the age of the internet now and 15 years ago, would this league have maybe had survived? Possibly. Or at least had more, fan interest and television viewers. But, diehard football people like me, NFL guys, we're so entrenched in the draft. Every minute that I'm not working on something non-draft related for the site, I've got tape pulled up and going through prospects. And for other people who have lives, who might be fans of the NFL, the spring and the summer's probably time of year to spend time with your family or whatnot. So not a huge shock. I think quarterback play definitely was lacking in the league, and that hurt. And it's sad, and we'll see. I guess the XFL's up next, and we'll see how they do.
Yeah, you're obviously the business guy, and I'm much less so. But it just seems weird that their lead investor, what was his name, Tom Dundon, I believe was his name. Basically, the reason why he pulled the plug on his investment was that he wanted to get an agreement with the NFL and the NFLPA that would basically have the AAF be the feeder league to the NFLP, its minor league, where they would be working together and to go so far as to roster players from the NFL, like third stringers and backups, to play in the AAF to get playing time that way, which to me seems like such a pie-in-the-sky, crazy idea, especially right out of the gate. I don't know why you would bring on an investor with that idea when it seemed like the AAF was trying to at first be independent of the NFL to prove itself and then maybe work something out down the road. It just felt like philosophically the creators of the league and this lead investor were going in two totally different directions, and that seems like disaster from the beginning.
Yeah, and I don't know how much there is to the truth of him just wanting to invest so he could get that gambling app and all. I mean, that sounds like a heck of an investment to make, for a betting app and all. But I mean, I haven't researched. I read the headlines in the first paragraph or two of stories kind of related to that, and the key fact there is that they're suspending operations as of right now, and it's obviously going to fold.
Yeah. I just feel for the guys who are out of jobs. The players obviously, but also staff, social media people. I know some of the people that work social media for the league, and they're out of a job now too. So really unfortunate, but it's a league that it's just hard to compete. Money is everything, and honestly, I really stopped watching. I mean, I was following stuff on Twitter. I kind of knew who was playing well and what results were, but I stopped watching the games just because, as you said, there's draft stuff. There's so much going on. I just lost interest.
I wonder if if something similar to what NFL Europe was years ago, now with the NFL having a stronghold, a bigger stronghold, and a better presence overseas now, if something like that would work again, during this time of year. But I mean, we'll see. Like I said, the XFL's up next, and we'll see if they're able to sustain.
And their plan seems better. I was reading about it a little bit yesterday that they're really, obviously they're waiting an extra year. They're securing as much money as possible. They're invested by just one guy, Vince McMahon. He's really been one of the biggest and sole investors of the league. So I think they're going to be a lot more counter, to what the NFL is to give something different for fans. So I think I like their odds better than I like the AAF.
One thing is you'll see quite a few, and it's already happening. Quite a few of these guys are getting snapped up. I think Garrett Gilbert, one of the quarterbacks, is going to sign with the Cleveland Browns, and a few other names floating around there as well. So you'll probably see a flurry of signings these next 2 weeks of some of the I guess stars or better performing players in that league.
Yeah, and that's one good thing is that players are able to sign right away, and again, just feel bad for those guys because there's health insurance that's going unpaid, guys that are hurt right now that are having to pay their own way, just completely unfair to them and a really raw deal. Dave, where do you want to go from here? You want to talk about
speaking of the Browns.
Oh yeah. Yep, I don't want to forget
a report early this morning by Mary Kay Cabot, Cleveland.com, stating that the Browns are going to sign today former Steelers safety Morgan Burnett, and I think there's a report out there that's going to be a 2-year deal. So it'll be interesting to see the financials related to that. Burnett was obviously finally released by the Steelers, I think on April 1st, just a few days ago. They had obviously tried to trade Morgan Burnett, but that $5 million, nobody was going to trade for that $5 million salary he was due in 2019, and that's not a surprise. Teams just wait for him to get cut, and that's what happened. And it'll be interesting to see how much he signed. I'd be interested to see if he gets $5 million for 2 years. Which might end up being the case there. He'll obviously have to probably do battle for that strong safety spot opposite Demarius Randall over there, who, by the way, Burnett and Randall played together in Green Bay a few years back, and also that'll be an interesting thing to pay attention to for the Browns moving forward. And obviously one of the knocks on Burnett is he can't stay healthy. I think he hasn't played a full 16-game regular season since, 2012, somewhere along in there. Obviously missed quite a few games last year with the Steelers and ended up being one and done.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what he's going to sign for. I'm sure it's not going to be very much, but good luck with that, Cleveland. Have fun. That's all I got to say about that. All right, Dave, where do you want to go from here? We can talk about the mock draft that I posted on Wednesday, or we can go through some of these individual players. Take your pick here. We can talk about.
Let's go through your mock draft, and then we'll have the discussion. We were going to talk about Mack Wilson a little bit more in depth. So why don't you walk us through your mock draft that went up on the site on Wednesday?
Well, I guess it's a good segue to Mack Wilson because I know this probably surprised most people, and probably most people didn't like it, but with the 20th pick in my most recent mock draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I have them taking Mack Wilson from Alabama, and we're really getting to the point, at least for me, where I'm looking at it with a super close eye of what the team will do and not necessarily what I would do. Now that we have so much information on pro days and free draft visits and free agent moves and all that. And again, as I talked about the other day when we talked about Cleveland Farrell, kind of who's on that short list of underclassmen, Power 5, Colbert Pro Day. Not that that's definitive or the say-all, end-all, but it's certainly what history tells us. Mack Wilson was one of the 3 names I came up with. And given all the effort that Kevin Colbert's put in and trying to find an inside linebacker and how much they've talked about needing to replace that position, I'm going Mack Wilson here because I think, he's not awful. I know he's not Devin Bush. He doesn't have the gaudy 40 time, but this guy can cover and make plays and played really well at a top school.
Save that thought. We'll discuss him more in depth there. So go on through the rest of it.
All right, the second round, I actually was probably going to go with Darnell Savage here at 52 overall, but I know that you had him in your mock draft, so I wanted to go with something a little bit different. I think there's a ton of good dime options this year for the Steelers team. You look at Taylor Rapp from Washington, Jonathan Abram from Mississippi State, Amani Hooker from Iowa, but I landed on Juan Thornhill from Virginia, and you want to talk about playmakers, adding splash, the things Kevin Colbert talked about. You're not going to find many defensive backs with bigger splash than Juan Thornhill. 13 career interceptions, 6 last year for the Cavaliers. Big guy, obviously destroyed the combine. I mean, he's 200 pounds. He ran 4.42, 44-inch vert, 11.9 in the broad. Could possibly play a little bit of corner, can roll down. Kind of has that Sean Davis profile of a really top athlete, versatile guy. And Thornhill, in his case, can make big plays.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about his tape, that's for sure, and especially the fact that he was able to pick off as many passes as he did. And we know Kevin Colbert mentioned guys that could be ball hawks earlier this offseason. So you have to think that along with the usual sparky kind of players and are going to play into that. So yeah, I mean you mentioned all the names. Darnell Savage is going to be hard to ignore. Obviously Thornhill, Hooker, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Yep.
You know, all those very athletic kind of dime backer guys that can play in the slot are going to be in play here.
Absolutely. So you can take your pick. I really like Darnell Savage. We'll talk about him a little bit later in the show. For the third and fourth round pick, or the 2 third-round picks, I should say, actually 2 names that were on your list. I just have them bumped up higher than what you had in your mock. Miles Boykin, the receiver from Notre Dame in the 3rd round. I think he can be that X receiver. Obviously, a ton of interest. Steelers are clearly doing their homework on him, having Colbert at his pro day to see a lot of guys, but Boykin included, and then bringing him in for a pre-draft visit. So I think that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of a raw guy who could maybe make an impact the second half of the season. And then Foster Moreau, the tight end from LSU, with the 83rd pick overall in the draft for round 3. Just kind of a classic Steelers tight end that I think compares very favorably to Jesse James.
Yeah, no complaint. I mean, look, I've had Foster ever since the Senior Bowl. I've had him circled. I really think they like him. It now just comes down to how early. You know, how early do you, if you wait, you know, how early do you take a guy like him, and is he indeed the guy? I mean, you look at what, you know, obviously wasn't used a ton in the passing game there at LSU. He can do it. Obviously not one of the most dynamic tight ends in this year's draft class, but you know, a good blocker and just all around good guy, and I think a captain, and wore that what number did he wear there? The prize
18. Yep.
Yeah, the prize number 18 there for him as well too. So really going to be hard to keep Foster Moreau out of your mock draft if you wait. You know, don't grab one in the early first two or three rounds there.
And that's why I went with Moreau in the 3rd, because he had that really good combine workout, and I think he is a more well-rounded guy than most of these other tight ends that come out. And I went with Boykin at 66, a lot higher, because he got a 2nd-round grade from the NFL Draft Advisory Committee when he declared, and when you have that just combination of the height, weight, speed, I know it's a deep receiver class, there's a lot of options here, but I just think when you have that combo, it's hard to see that guy slip too far. For the 4th round, I wanted to go a little bit different, and I wanted to kind of go a little heavy offense here, because I really think when you consider replacing Antonio Brown, it's hard to do that with just one receiver and clap your hands and saying, yep, okay, we're good. I think you have to replace him with a lot more, and you have to get really creative in how you try to replace his production. So that's why I went with Justice Hill, the running back from Oklahoma State, that I could see as being that space player, especially early on in his career. Athletic, dynamic, a good game breaker, somebody that thinks that can be used in the screen game, the RPO game. And he can run inside too. He's not a tree archer like Chris Rainey. I mean, he's 200 pounds. He's productive. I mean, he tested super, super well. So that's a guy that I think can get a role in year 1 as being that space player, not just a number 3 running back that doesn't do much on game day.
Yeah, you know, I know quite a bit about him.
Yes, you do.
You know, going through all that film last year on Mason Rudolph and James Washington and all, and he's you know, like you said, you look at his height and weight and you say, oh no, you know, but really this is a guy that can run in between the tackles there. Now, obviously he's not. I don't think in the NFL he's an every down kind of back, but he can definitely come in and do some of the dirty work. Probably pass protection needs to be worked on, as with most backs, you know, coming out of college into the NFL. But a lot of nice tape on him at Oklahoma State, and you have to know with them having Mason Rudolph and James Washington all already in the building, they know quite a bit about Justice Hill already.
Yeah, so I think that'd be a great fit. And you're right. Yeah, pass pro is going to be an issue, but Jalen Samuels didn't pass pro since his sophomore year, and they still took him. So I don't think it's going to bother them too much. In the 5th round, I went kind of just with, I guess, kind of a bland pick, but I think one I've been trying to find a place in my mock drafts for defensive linemen, because I think, you know, one is going to get taken. I think it could still be that surprise pick, as I've talked about before. So I go 5th round with Rennell Wen from Arizona State, big defensive end, maybe play some nose tackle as well. Do you know anything about him?
Yeah, I mean, athletic guy. I think a better pass rusher than he is against the, you know, a better pass rusher than he is against the run from what I've saw on him. When you going down, he was a Senior Bowl guy, if I'm not mistaken. And, you know, early in the process, you're looking at those height, weight, athletic types, you know, to try to get a starting point in, and it was easy to kind of circle him as a guy that would potentially fit for the Steelers.
Yep. So I think defensive line depth certainly something that could and probably should be addressed. For the 6th round, I think you had a corner go as well with one of our 3 6th-round picks. I went with Chris Boyd from Texas, just looking for man corners that have some size and can run, and he's just 5'11" and a half, 211 pounds that ran in the mid 4.4s. He didn't pick off a lot of passes, but the ball skills are there. I think he averaged basically a pass breakup per game. Cousin of Bobby Taylor, longtime corner, I think, for the Eagles, I believe. And then he's actually related to Curtis Brown, the former Steelers cornerback. So a guy maybe they kind of can get some insight there on. I heard maybe there's some character concerns with him. I'll have to look into that. But in the 6th round, you're taking flyers on guys that can run and play man to man.
He is a guy that I looked at a little bit when putting my last mock together, and I couldn't help but go back to some of the Senior Bowl practices, and I think wasn't he the one that just, did not have a good Senior Bowl week. Had guys toasting him right and left. It seems like my memory serves me on that. So that having that etched in my mind kind of made me shy away from him.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Yeah, it's a crapshoot kind of 6th-round cornerback and not the strongest class. I almost went with Xavier Crawford from Central Michigan, but the lack of arm length kind of turned me off on him. But I think your corner selection. Who'd you have? What corner did you have?
Oh, I don't even remember. That's like,
yeah, feels like a month ago.
I'll have to look back.
All right. Well, I think I ultimately liked your corner better than I probably liked my corner. With my second of 3 6th-round picks, I went kicker as well. I went with a different kicker, though. I think this one makes a ton of sense. Matt Gay from Utah. Huge leg, guy that has range up to 55, 57 yards. I think the biggest thing that's kind of sells me on Matt Gay over somebody like Austin Seibert from Oklahoma or even Cole Tracy from LSU is that, Gay's kicked in Utah. He's kicked in cold weather, bad weather, kind of being battle-tested in that sense, and I'll take the Utah guy over the LSU guy any day.
I had Michael Jackson Sr., that's right.
Yeah. I like Michael Jackson Sr. That was a good pick.
I don't hate you for throwing a kicker in there.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all.
Yep. And he's an interesting story, too. He played soccer until basically 2 years ago. He was playing soccer at Utah Valley State, and then he picked up football. He played 1 year of high school football, and then just won the Lou Groza Award his first year kicking for the Utes. So hats off to him. I think it's a really cool story and a big leg. And again, a guy that's kicked in cold weather conditions. With my final 6th-round pick, again,
you're going to have to school me on these last 2 picks of yours.
Yeah, I really like this one at 209. Matthew Betts from Laval. That's up in Canada, and I think it's a really interesting guy. A guy I've been researching more and more about. Somebody that dominated his level of competition, which he should. I think he has 35 career sacks, and I know it's Laval, it's Canada. Now, the school is described as the Alabama of Canada. Take that for whatever it's worth. But I think what sells me on him for Pittsburgh are 2 things. One, he attended the East-West Shrine game and played really, really well, so I think seeing that jump in competition is a huge benefit to him. And 2 is that they went to his pro day, and they were only one of 5 teams that went to Laval's pro day. Now, more teams were scheduled to go. There was a snowstorm, prevented, I think, three or four other teams from going up there. But still, only one of 5 teams they sent area scout Dave Pettit up there. So I think the fact that they made that special trip for this guy, who tested pretty well, ran a 4.7 flat, a 6.77 3-cone, which is excellent, really, really good number for a guy 260 pounds with good length. This is a guy that I like as that day 3 sleeper.
How much tape is on him, and do you see that athleticism, that bend on tape?
I scrolled to a highlight tape a little bit. I try to really stay away from highlight tapes because I think that the devil when you talk about trying to scout guys off of some pure manufactured highlight tape. So I think I'd go to the Shrine game more. The other interesting thing is that in Canada for Laval, for defensive linemen have to play 1 yard off the football, and obviously him playing now on the line of scrimmage in the NFL, and as he did in the Shrine game, is actually probably going to help him. So the fact that he had 35 career sacks, having to play off ball like that, I think really helps him out and makes him a really interesting guy. The great first step. His explosion's fantastic.
They have to do that at the college level too?
For Laval, yeah. Now, he said in high school he didn't have to do that. He was able to play NFL, American football rules. For Laval, you got to play, I guess the rule is 1 yard off the football.
Oh, interesting. So like the Canadian Football League then, huh?
Yeah, right. But he has played it the other way before, then of course played well at the Shrine game with American rules. And again, if you're having 35 sacks, when you're having to play off ball, get you on the line of scrimmage, I'm really interested to see what you can do there. So maybe 6th round was a touch too high. I'm not quite sure, but I like the pick.
Could he be a UDFA possibly?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one side I use basically is calling him a UDFA, but I think if you want to get the guy, you get the guy. And to send a scout to Canada during the busy pro day circuit, I mean, I think that says something. And to be one of only 5 teams there, it's not like it's all 32 teams were sent scouts to see this guy. So I think the fact he played well at the Shrine game, I think probably caught the Steelers' attention and said we got to find more out about Matthew Betts.
All right,
And good character guy too, from what everything I've read.
Tell me about Demetrius Knox.
Yeah, I tried to find a lot of information on him. I mean, it's kind of a limited resume. It's just kind of the throw at the wall, late round offensive line guy, prospect. You can throw one of a million names out here. But 20 game starter for the Buckeyes, play guard, maybe play a little bit of center as well, a little tall for it, maybe perhaps. But they were at his pro day. I think Adrian Clem was there. I believe they met with him. So I'm just trying to go off reading the tea leaves and somebody at a school that they went to and talked to. So Demetrius Knox, he had, I think, a foot injury that's held him out of this pre-draft process, but I can see he's a 7th round flyer.
All right.
So that's the mock. Any final thoughts there? I think we came out fairly similar in terms of where we attacked first and some of the names even we put in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know an inside linebacker. We know probably a dime safety, a wide receiver, possibly a tight end. It's looking more and more like a running back's going to be mixed in there. We're almost positive this team's going to take a defensive lineman at some point as well, too. They definitely could use another corner. If they don't get one, early, then probably going to have to wait, till the middle or later rounds for that. The kicker, that's probably up for discussion. Probably a lot of people are going to turn their nose up on that, but I think there's a possibility that we see one of those, and you're going to need an edge. Mm-hmm. I really think they're going to need an edge, and I think the pre-draft visitor list kind of shows that as well too. So yeah, a couple of new names for me to kind of play around with, probably in these last 3 weeks here to kind of research out.
All right, Dave. Since we started with Mack Wilson for my mock, let's talk about Mack Wilson more in depth now. And I'm guessing we're gonna have a more similar conclusion on him than Devin Bush, but I'm not sure because I don't know your thoughts on Mack Wilson too much. So tell me about your impression on the Alabama linebacker.
Well, first, I stuck mainly this time around to his 2018 tape. Okay. Which I think his 2017 tape, from what I've seen, is slightly better. But overall, and I watched, I think, nine games of 2018. The things that stick out to me, and really it was my first impression right at the beginning of the whole process here, is where was the playmaking at? Not that that's the end all do all. We had that discussion about Devin Bush and all, but you just, to me, you don't see the sideline to sideline capabilities with Mack Wilson that you see with Bush, for starters. I mean, that I don't think I'm going to get a disagreement out of you on that.
You will not.
Second, his tackling leaves a lot to be desired. He tackles high. He wants to pull guys forward to the ground instead of driving them back. Just his tackling and his mistackling. He doesn't keep under control. You see him on the ground a lot. I don't know how much you notice, but he is on the ground way too much for my liking with him. Moving forward, as far as play deciphering, it looks at a lot of times he's flat-footed. It doesn't look like he processes as fast as a Devin Bush. Devin Bush is better at slipping blocks, in my opinion. Devin Bush is better going north-south into a crease better. Trying to think what else. He's okay getting after the quarterback as long as you're not sending him up like the A gap or something. If he has to go up against a center or a guard, you see him stymied quite a bit. Now, to his credit, you will see him jump up and bat down, 5-6 passes, I think, last season at the line of scrimmage there, to his credit. Obviously, he's making the sacks that he should, I think, on free running ones. Not great at taking on, getting met in the backfield or on the edge by a tight end or a running back, in my opinion, as far as that goes. He did have to drop. I mean, look, you're talking about Alabama and a lot of teams that they played. They were boat racing early in games, so that caused him to have to a lot of the zone pattern matching kind of drops there. So he wasn't going forward as much as maybe some of these other linebackers there. But overall, and look, he won't be the first guy that if I miss on. But I just do not see it at all with Mack Wilson. And didn't this kid start off this offseason as kind of being called the number one? Or the number one or number two inside linebacker or off the ball linebacker in this year's class. Alex, I don't see it at all. Now you tell me where you think I've gone wrong on any of this, and I'll go this far. I don't think he's a first round pick. I don't even think he's a top 50 pick, and I'm not so sure he's the third best off the ball linebacker in this year's draft class. I think he should have stayed in school.
Wow. So you like David Long Jr. more than Mack Wilson?
I don't know where I would, I mean, there's obviously some the gap. Look, if anything, the large selection of tape on Mack Wilson shows us is there's a big gap between the Devins and whoever's next. All right. Now Long to me is obviously more of a playmaker, a little bit more of a gambler, but I think he reads and processes a lot better. Obviously he had the production at West Virginia. Now, where is he in coverage? Aspect versus Wilson. Look, you didn't see Wilson make a lot of plays in coverage. Now I will say, let me throw this out there. What was the one? Name the two plays, and I assume you watched quite a bit of Mack Wilson tape from last year ahead of this. Name me two plays, and I've already got these picked out, so there's no cheating or whatnot. Name me the two plays that Mack Wilson made last season for Alabama that stuck out the most for you on tape.
Off the top, LSU interception.
That's one for me, absolutely.
Cover two.
Late in the game.
Yeah, the game was over.
In the end zone, incredible play.
Yeah,
incredible play.
That's literally what I wrote down. I wrote down incredible interception, cover two, down the seam, diving interception. The second one, I didn't watch 9 games, so you have to tell me the second one.
The diving interception against Texas A&M.
Oh, I do have that one. Yeah, on that little check down to the running back that he kind of dove in front of, which was a nice play. Yeah, so.
So I mean, we're right on the money there. But I mean, what else? What else is there with him? Change my mind now, okay. About him being a top 50 guy.
Well, let me try to figure out which way I want to go. I don't feel as strongly negatively as you do about Mack Wilson. I agree that there's definitely a big gap. I agree he's not nearly as Devin Bush or even maybe a David Long in terms of that explosiveness ability, especially sideline to sideline. I think he's a good processor. I think he does finish plays well. I think hit power and ability to finish is one of the things I like the best about Mack Wilson. And I think he has good closing speed. I just think laterally, he's not going to be Devin Bush or Devin White or one of these super sparky type guys. I think he's very fluid and comfortable in coverage. He did it a ton. I mean, I think one reason why his numbers in terms of the splash plays were down, especially tackles for loss, is that A, as you said, Alabama got so many big leads, teams didn't run the football on him, and B, going back to 2017, he was a dime guy. He was playing in sub package. He wasn't really playing on run early, early downs, run heavy downs. So I think that kind of kept the numbers down. I think in man coverage, I think there's some concerns, as there's going to be with most linebackers. But I think in zone coverage, he gets depth. He reads the play well. He's well coached. And so I think he's a good coverage linebacker. I'll put it that way. So
sometimes, I mean, look, he struggles. He struggles getting off some of them second level blocks too.
Yes.
I mean, and he will get turned out of a hole. I mean, you go watch that selection of 9 games that I watched. I did not watch the Arkansas State. I'm trying to think what games I didn't watch. But I mean, I watched damn near all of them, and he started off good against in Georgia, but that game got away from him as well too. There just so many times him getting turned out of the hole and all, and I don't see the C. We talk about the old C to do. Remember Sean Spence at one point coming out, he had a good C to do. I don't see that with Mack Wilson.
See, I think I disagree there. Now, I agree. I think the biggest issue I had with Mack Wilson was that I think he takes on blocks well because he's a bigger frame guy, and I think he's got a good punch and a good strike, but he really has trouble working off some of these blocks. And granted, so does Devin Bush, and so do some of these other linebackers. He's not the only one, but yeah, I think once he gets engaged, he has trouble coming off. Now, I don't see him getting washed and turned out maybe as much as you do, but trying to shed blocks and disengage, his hand use is very much underdeveloped.
What did you think about his overall tackling?
I liked it. And I know you said he missed tackles. Maybe I just didn't watch enough games or the right games, but I think his hit power, his tackling ability to finish, I thought were strong traits.
I thought his angles and his tackling, he's usually the ball carrier or whoever is going forward at the end of the play with him from the selection. I got more turned off. I almost didn't watch the last 3 games because, it's just I was so turned off on it, but I stuck with it. Wanted to see it all the way through. But, literally the 2 plays, there were 3 plays that stuck out to me with him. One was obviously the LSU game, in that interception in the back of the end zone. Second was the interception against A&M, and the third was Johnny Lamb just blowing his butt up on a block in that Oklahoma game. On down the field. I'll say this too. There are some plays where I kind of question his motor a little bit.
Wow, you are just
I know. I am.
Usually, I gotta have an anonymous scout next to these quotes.
Yeah, I know, but
what do you like about Mack Wilson then? Anything you like about him?
I like his ability to drop and his ability to turn and run, and his ability, I think, to understand most of the time what he's supposed to be doing in some of those zone man coverages, if you will. If a guy comes into your zone, you stick with him type of thing. But outside of that, you don't see him break up any passes, down the field, past the line of scrimmage, anything of that nature. And generally, when he's making tackles against the run, they're 2, 3, 4, 5 yards down the field, and very rarely do you see him down the field making tackles past 5 yards.
Yeah, sometimes I think coverage is about the plays that you don't allow, that don't even get thrown your way as much as they are the ones that get thrown into your window. So, yeah, I disagree. I think the hit power, I think the tackling, I think some of the angles and processing, I was pretty happy with. I think to play for Alabama and play for Nick Saban, you got to be a pretty instinctual, intelligent guy, and I believe that he is. So, but yeah, I get it. Yeah, where was the splash? Are you seeing these great sideline-to-sideline plays? Are you seeing any sort of special trait that says, yes, this is going to be our guy? And I understand that there's definitely a big concern there. And then again, the block shedding is another issue.
Is he a first-round guy?
Would I take him at 20 if I'm Kevin Colbert? No, I don't think I would.
Would you take him in the second round? Because right now where I'm at, I wouldn't even take him in the second.
I'm going to have to create my list of my top inside linebackers. Certainly the 2 Devins are at the top. I don't know if Wilson's going to be my third guy. There's another guy I just watched we can talk about maybe briefly here in a little bit that I think could be that number 3 guy. But I would be open to the conversation starting second round on about Mack Wilson.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he's not drafted, or probably wouldn't even be out on a limb as far as I'm concerned. I don't think he's drafted in the top 50, and I would not be surprised if he falls out of the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, and then there's the issue of the injury, and he didn't test that much, and his numbers aren't great. So I don't think his numbers are terrible. I don't know if 40 time means the say-all end-all to this team. I think he ran 4.7. Which isn't terrible for
I tell you, when you come off of watching a whole lot of tape that we did on Bush,
yep,
and then you turn on his tape for 8 or 9 games, and then you know what you know about Devin White and his tape. To me, the only one. I would have. I gotta be honest. I would have Mack Wilson behind David Long. Be quite honest with you.
Well, that's what I was asking earlier. So I guess we kind of worked through that. Yeah, no, I agree. There's a big drop off. That tier 1 to tier 2 from Devin White to Devin Bush to the rest of the field. It's a drop off. There's no question about that.
And I think didn't Nick Saban say after the year, before Mack Wilson declared, or after he declared that he thought he should stay in the school?
Did he?
Yeah. I think there's a quote floating around there somewhere for Saban saying he thought he should have stayed. Look, if nobody will mention it if he's drafted in the first 2 rounds, I'm sure. But you can bet for sure if he falls out of those first 2 rounds, I'm going to be letting everybody know about it.
Oh, I know you will.
Here's the thing, though. I unfortunately, like I said several shows ago, he was the first guy I turned the tape on. Mm-hmm. And with all the hype, and that's the dangerous thing to me about this process is we go out of the we come out of the Steelers season right into these initial rankings where they're mostly probably stat and highlight related, okay, from the outsiders, draft nicks and all like that, and with the kind of hype on this kid and him being the first tape that I threw on, I was eventually turned off. Now, how much of that bias has stuck in my head? I try to be conscious of that. But after taking some time off from him and going back and watching all these games this past week, I just don't. Like I said, I've been wrong before about players. I'm going to be wrong in the future about players. It happens, but I just don't see it with Mack Wilson.
Do you think if you had to create I know you don't have a ranking yet, but you had to create a top 5 off-ball linebackers, I don't think Wilson's going to be in your top 5. I'm guessing.
Oh man,
it doesn't sound like it.
Probably not. I don't have it in front. Yeah, I have David Long ahead. The Minnesota kid. I mean, Gary Johnson had, obviously not in the same class as, in my opinion, as Long and the Devins and all. But I mean, I saw more in the limited amount of tape I've seen of Gary Johnson that had impressed me more than what I saw in 9 or 10 games of Mack Wilson.
Yeah, I just think for Wilson, I think he's a good coverage linebacker, and I think he wasn't asked to go backwards a lot, and there was a lot of talent around him, which helps and hurts. It's funny you mentioned that Saban. I'm gonna look up that Saban comment because that reminds me of when the Seahawks drafted James Carpenter in the first round, and I think they had a cutaway to Saban just kind of looking like, what are you guys doing? And Carpenter turned out to be a pretty underwhelming first-round pick. So, Saban knows maybe if these guys are worth it or not.
I mean, look, and make no mistake, Alabama had a nice front, and same with Michigan. You watch enough Michigan tape, you know that both those fronts, were good fronts, and that probably leads itself a little bit to some linebackers not having to make all the plays,
Yeah.
You get into the kid in Minnesota there, he's probably the only one making plays.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk real quick about, because I know we're going to get to Fant and Darnell Savage, but the guy I wrote about today that was brought in for a pre-draft visit, that was the compelling reason why I wanted to look at him, but Ben Burke-Kirven from Washington. Man, I like this guy a lot, Dave. I think this guy, if you don't get Devin Bush at 20, you're looking 3rd round, I'm taking Ben Burke-Kirven.
What games are the must-sees with him?
Really turn on any game, because this guy had 176 tackles last year, so you can turn on any game and you're going to find him flying around the football. Now, I watched whatever I had available for the All-22, so I watched, some UCLA, some Oregon stuff, because I wanted to see the All-22, but you want to talk about a guy that can work off blocks, that has hand use, can stack and shed, it's him, and I don't see that with any of the other linebackers I've watched, including Devin Bush. I mean, this guy gets off blocks. You don't get, near 200 tackles without working off some blocks.
I think I've seen his game against Ohio State. And
yeah, I watched the Ohio State game.
I can't remember the other one that I went through on him. So I definitely need to look. They brought him in for a pre-draft visit, so yep. Obviously need to do a little bit of homework on him. I don't know how much Washington's tape is out there for enough. If there's enough for me to do a contextualization on him, but let me tell you, put a 2018 contextualization of Mack Wilson together, it's not going to be that impressive, And look, and we had that long discussion about Bush, and stats plays a part in some of this. Obviously, you just cannot scout these guys by the stat. I mean, that goes without saying. And I thought we had a good discussion about Bush and potentially why the stat sheet plays weren't there. Now you will see the 2 or 3 yard, sideline to sideline tackles with Bush and all like that. And obviously those things don't, there's not a stop category in the official stat sheet. Those kind of things. But I tell you, with Mack Wilson, it leaves a lot. That the lack of playmaking to me transfers over into the tape as well too. You just don't see enough reason to turn your head as to why he wasn't making plays, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. I can't defend it the way that I did with Devin Bush, but yeah, I think I like David Long Jr. a lot. I like Ben Burke-Kirven a lot. I think those guys are right up there with Mack Wilson. Did you want to talk about Noah Fant or Darnell Savage or?
Yeah, a little bit about Fant.
I didn't really watch Fant because I don't really take.
All right. Here's what I think I know about the tight end class as far as first round goes. It's TJ and that's it.
Okay.
What
do you mean by that's it? You mean as in he's tier 1, or you mean there's no one else?
I think he's the first round guy, and that's it. Fant has some nice tape out there, but Fant had I think a 10% drop rate at Iowa. He wasn't on the field all the time. All right, they definitely pulled him off. His blocking leaves a lot to be desired. Sure, Fant had to stretch to had several stretch to play or stretch to field type plays and all, but I just with his limited production so far and how he was used and how many total catches did he have at Iowa? 70 something.
I'll look it up for you. Sounds about right. Let's see what Sports Reference says. 78.
All right, 78, and that was 2 seasons, right?
9 catches his freshman year, but effectively 69 over the last 2 seasons.
All right, and then season high last year of 39. Of course, look, he definitely a red zone threat, and definitely a guy that you line him up and run that slot fade with him. He can win that. He can run that Y cross, and get loose. He can run that mesh, from a slot and all like that too. But man, a nice playmaker, but no way do I throw him up there in round 1. Now, will a team, go after him? Say Green Bay, I think Mel Kiper and Todd McShay and their dueling mocks or whatnot that just came out that I wrote about. Both of them have them going to Green Bay. Is it Green Bay or someone else later in the I forget who exactly he had them going to, but they both had. Let me look, see if I can find it real quick here. The Green Bay, the 30th overall from New Orleans. They both have Fant going to Green Bay later in the round. I think it's TJ and that's it. Then we get into the old Irv Smith and Fant discussion.
Okay, so
no way would I take Fant at 20 overall.
Well, there goes my question. Well, Hawkinson?
Look. We had the old Iowa Pro Day thing and this, that, and the other. But push comes to shove. I could listen to an argument for Hawkinson, break emergency in case if he falls and if other things hadn't broken your way or whatnot. I could understand that at 20 overall. I'm not trading up for him or anything like that. But to me, he's the only tight end that deserves, or in my opinion, should go in the first round.
Okay, yeah, fair. I could listen to that argument too. I think it's unlikely. I don't think it's impossible. But I think Hawkinson. I think there's so much good value in the middle rounds for these tight ends, and the tight ends struggle to make that year 1 impact. So I'm cool with getting Mack, at least Mack in the mid rounds, Foster Moreau, somebody like that. I probably agree with you on Fant because he does feel like a big receiver, and that's not going to fly in Pittsburgh.
Right, and especially with that limited kind of production, they're more on. If you better be able to block, you better be able to do more than some of the things that he's good at. Look, I don't hate Fant, but me and tight ends, I'm not afraid to bang the table for a tight end if I like him, George Kittle. But
to be fair, who had limited production too? He threw like 35 career catches.
Sure, but the overall package with him was just fantastic.
No,
I mean, the tape, him throwing people out of the club, it was just all over the place there. So Hawkinson, not on that level, but I think Hawkinson, I guess now the thing to do in the next couple weeks is try to find out what the gap is between, Fant and Irv Smith,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't watched much of the top level tight ends, but yeah, could a tight end in round 2 happen? Yeah, that's possible. Irv Smith is certainly a good name to throw out there from Bama. With Savage, you had the contextualization, the compilation with Darnell Savage, and this guy just feels like he's going to become a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Very, very impressive tape. Not afraid to play down low. Can play all over, really. A little bit undersized, but he carries it well,
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a guy that you could see being, you'd like him to be another inch or two taller, maybe, and maybe that's the kind of thing that's going to possibly keep him. What do you go? 5'9", 5'10"?
I would say he's 5'11", 5'10", 5'11".
Is he? I might be getting my my measurements mixed up here.
Yeah, he's. I wish I put a little extra weight on him. He's 198. I know that, and that's a little light for where he's going to play, his style.
But he reads things well, processes well, and he can do it all. So we already talked about those kind of guys. The Savage. Let's see, 5'10" and 3/4 for Savage, 198. 31-inch arms, 9 1/8 inch hands, the 4.36 40. Jumped out of the building at the combine. Nice short shuttle, nice 3-cone. You named those safeties already. Those guys that kind of fit, what the Steelers look for, and you throw in Ugo Amadi, who's more of a later round guy. I guess he's more of a if we don't get one of these guys, he's a guy we could look at, in the later rounds there. Thornhill has some nice tape on as well too. You definitely want to see a ball hawk. You definitely want to see one of those guys that can come in and give you a lot in dime situations and can also play on some special teams for you.
I was going through the contextualization that you posted, Dave, and let me tell you a story about Darnell Savage and why I really like him and why I think he's kind of the dude. It's 2017. Maryland's a bad team. They're 3-4 at this point in mid-October. They've lost 3 straight. They got blown out by Ohio State. They lost by, 16 in Northwestern. They got blown out by Wisconsin. I think in the Ohio State game, their quarterback completed 3 passes. They're just getting their teeth kicked in. And they're facing Indiana, who they should beat. And if they lose this game, they go to 3-5, and their season's probably effectively over. And they're stomped pretty early. It's 14-0 early in this game. Indiana has the lead. And Savage takes over, and he picks off a pass, returns it, I think, 20 yards, and Maryland scores on the very next play to make it 14-7. Now it's 16-7 in the second quarter, and Savage comes in, blocks a punt, returns it for a touchdown. It's 16-14. Maryland ends up taking the lead, winning that game, and at least having that moment and breaking that losing streak. So this just feels like a guy that whenever the team needs him, and when you need a big play, you turn to Darnell Savage Jr. And I thought that sequence of events, just given the context, maybe I'm playing it up a little too much, but I just thought it was really impressive for him to kind of basically be the one responsible for beating Indiana.
He definitely feels like he could be a Pittsburgh Steeler, doesn't he?
Yeah.
With all the attention he's attracted in the process. He was a Senior Bowl guy, right?
Yes, I believe.
All right, so I believe I keep losing track of who's the underclassman and who's not and all, but definitely feels he looks like a guy that could come in right away, give you special teams play, and probably not take too terribly long to get on the field in some dime situations.
I'm thinking 52 for him, second round. I think you get him at 66, which I think would be the floor, but I think 52, 66 are the spots to take him at.
Yeah, you might have to get him in the second round if you want him.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with my mock. I think this is a solid top 50 player, so I think 52 if he's there, you're taking him.
All right.
You want to talk about Sean Bunting real quick? We have a
right, and props to you. It didn't take you long after, I don't know, was it the combine that you wrote up? You said, hey, this is what the Steelers look for right here.
Yep. And this is a guy that just your classic big, strong, fast, man-to-man corner. Now, change of direction, zone coverage is going to be an issue, but you want to play him in a man-heavy scheme like the Steelers have gone to, Sean Bunting's your guy. Really good press corner.
And I put up that contextualization on him. He does tend to get a little grabby, though, right?
Yeah, and that's natural for those guys. As Tomlin will say, you'd rather say whoa than sick 'em.
Yeah, I think that stuck out. He's not afraid to come up and tackle. That stuck. He had a handful of tackles for losses in a couple of those games. Obviously, cornerbacks are not going to be heavy on the stat sheet when it comes to that issue. And I think target wise, I don't think he fared too terribly bad. Now, I remember going through the game books on him, thinking, "Oh, there's another pass interference penalty there." So I think that's an aspect of his game where he's going to have to be a little bit, a little bit more conscious of is the grabbing and the holding there. Nice leaping ability, you see that. There's certain aspects of his combine workout that stick out. I think the 4.42 you see on tape. I think you see that 41.5-inch and 10-foot 6-inch broad jump. I don't think we have other 20 and 3 cones on him. Do we? Do you have that from Pro Day or no?
I'd have to look. I don't believe so, though. I don't think I have it.
But you talking about a guy, I don't know. I've seen people put him in the 3rd round. I think that might be a little strong for me, but I don't know. Maybe that 2nd, 3rd round pick, but definitely fourth on. I mean, it's on with him. He's not going to be on the board too much longer into the 4th round, probably. Definitely gone by the end of the 4th, I would think.
I really think he's going to be a day 2 guy. I think he'd be as high as a top 75 guy. I mean, if you have the right scheme where you're playing man heavy, I mean, he's kind of like what I want to say here, kind of poor man's Greedy Williams, but a better tackler. And this is a guy that, can play man-to-man super well. Now, again, the concern is that he is stiff, and zone coverage he's going to struggle, and even some man concepts where he's got to flip his hips. I mean, there's going to be some issues there, but you want to defend the 9 route, and this is your guy.
I think if you're looking at corners not taken in the 1st round potential for the Steelers, I think you have to look at guys like Bunting. I think you have to look. I mean, Chris Boyd, but that to me that's much later. That's damn, we didn't get one situation there. But I think Bunting's in play. I don't know about Justin Lane at a position switch, and I mean, does he have enough snaps in there he definitely has the playmaking. we saw that at Michigan State during that contextualization that I did on him. I think he's possibly in play. I think David Long potentially out of Michigan's in play. Julian Love's obviously in play. Could Julian Love be the reason they went to Notre Dame? Obviously, the defensive lineman Tillery was there, but could Love be the one that they really went to go see there? Possible. I mean, he fits. Amari, I don't know. I get hot and cold. It depends. I mean, I guess I could see Amari from Penn State in there. I'm trying to scroll down the rest of the list there. I think that's it as far as kind of date or past the 1st round cornerbacks that you could potentially see being the guy for the Steelers.
I mean, the question is, and I know that, obviously you don't want to mirror yourself to we're not taking this position or we're taking this position, but I feel like a lot of those guys are day 2 corners, and I don't know if the Steelers...
I forgot Mike Jackson, my boy Mike Jackson, but he's a little bit later there.
Yeah, I consider him kind of a day 3 guy. But are the Steelers going to take a corner in the 2nd or 3rd round? And I don't want to say no, because again, I'm not going to play those games, especially going into the draft, but I just don't think they're going to be in position to take a corner where those guys are expected to go, especially the Penn State guy and Justin Lane. I think those guys are top 50, top 60 players, and I think they're just not going to be where the Steelers are taking a corner.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, all bets are off at the 1st round. I just don't see them, greedy. I think even in Kuiper and McShay's most recent dual mock drafts, they have one of them has Greedy going to the Steelers and all. Is Greedy going to be the 1st corner off the board? He has to be, right?
Well, it sounds less and less like it. It sounds very much up in the air. He probably would be to me, but it wouldn't shock me if DeAndre Baker or people still like Rocky Sin. So I don't know. I can't say it was.
Murphy going to go before Greedy?
I mean, if you're looking for a slot guy, Possibly. It just depends on your scheme. They're different guys. Greedy's going to fit in a man-heavy scheme press coverage. If you're not that, then you're probably not going to take Greedy Williams. You might take, Byron Murphy or somebody else.
Are you taking Greedy if he's on the board at 20?
What else do I have on the board? I mean, he wouldn't be my first candidate. I like him. The question is, how do you get him playing time right away?
Yeah.
Probably not. But I think there's things that he fits. I like him. He fits in this man-heavy scheme the Steelers are now running. So there's reasons to take Greedy Williams, but knowing this team went out, spent heavy money on a corner, makes me think that they're not going to reinvest heavy in the corner right away in the draft. They're going to look elsewhere. That's the point of the draft. Free agency, you address one position. Draft, we're going to address something else.
I'm not going to get into the whole he won't be there, kind of thing here. But I personally expect Greedy, where I'm at right now, I expect Greedy to be first corner off the board. And when's the last time that the first corner went off the board at 20?
Probably been a while.
It's probably has been quite a while. I don't have that in front of me there. So that's where I am on the corner situation. Now any time after the first round, I think it's on as far as possibility, and the Steelers are getting a corner. I mean, you do bring up a good point though. Can you get that corner on the field?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, first and second round are guys that I want to play right away. Third round on, I think you're okay with sitting guys, role players, backups. But first and second round, I think those are the guys you want to get on the field right away. And I don't think Aurier or Lane are going to be sitting there third round, even at 66.
One last time with Devin White and Devin Bush, are you trading your second and your first? Swapping first and trading the second to go up and get either one of those guys?
I mean, you asked me the other day if I was going to trade a second, and I said no, I wouldn't trade the second for probably anybody. So, still, the answer is no.
Would you give one of the thirds? Would you give the first third 66?
Yep.
And a sixth?
Yeah, I'd be open to trading a third and something else. I wouldn't give up 52.
And how far would that buy you?
Yeah, probably 5-ish spots.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting. Yeah, I guess it depends. I mean, look, I think Kuiper had Bush going to the Steelers in his mock, but McShay has Bush going to the Bengals much earlier there. So I think we're going to continue playing this game the rest of the way on out. Half the group saying there's no way Bush is on the board. Then the people like me thinking there's an outside chance that Bush is still on the board at 20.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. There's an outside chance. That is what it is, though. It's an outside chance. I don't like the odds.
Okay. Where are we? Talked about Bunning. We talked about Savage. We talked about Fant. We talked about Mack Wilson.
Yep.
Where are we now?
I think we're just to some reader emails to finish out today's show.
All right. We already made it this far, huh?
Mm-hmm. Hour.
All right. Let's go to Jason Campbell here. Hola, amigos. Any phonetic spelling hola for me? Thank you, Jason. Just curious, do you think Vance will be a bigger target at the beginning of the year? I'm guessing there's a bit of an adjustment for Moncrief and obviously whoever is drafted. Do you think it'll be a more conservative approach or come out blazing?
I mean, that's hard to answer. I think, I think certainly you'd like him to get involved, as heavily as possible. You're probably going to work more middle of the field, especially if Juju's going to be in the slot. We'll see how that goes. And hopefully for Vance this year, he can come out firing. Last year he missed all the preseason, all camp, missed week 1. And if he can hit the ground running this year, which he hasn't been able to do the last 2 years, getting traded and then getting hurt this past year, that's probably limited him and limited his snap count. Last year he was having to really ease his way onto the field those first 2-3 weeks. So ideally, yes, short answer, he gets more involved right away. Yeah,
I mean, I think if he's able to stay healthy through the whole process, I think he can come out of the gate and be a 3 reception a game type guy.
I just hope they get him more involved in the red zone because you're missing a lot of red zone production without AB. I thought they did better the back half of the year getting Vance involved inside the 20, and they got to continue that.
And one of the pluses with Jesse James was he give you a big target down there.
Yeah, because I think Vance had literally 1 catch the first 10 weeks in the red zone, and that's just unacceptable.
And he's going to probably still drop 3 or 4 a year. on top of there.
Live
All
with
right, Joe Stitt writes in, quick one for you guys. Thinking of a Devin-less first round outside of the obvious choices like Cleveland Farrell. Do we need to think about Irv Smith Jr., tight end from Alabama? He's an underclassman, NFL family bloodline. Knox would be 1 year production in the anti-Alabama draft streak. Bit of a reach on the position of need, but that's what we're likely to see without Devin on the board. Look, I'm not so much the old anti-Alabama streak thing. That's way on down my list of telltale signs. I think it's more coincidence maybe with that as opposed to the old pro day visit. But I mean, look, he has a lot of the boxes checked. I don't, like I said earlier in the show, I think it's TJ in the first round and then Fant and Irv Smith more second round guys. I think one of the things I'm going to try to do over the next week is to figure out where I'd rank Irv and Fant and how early, if both those guys are firm second, top 50 guys in my opinion there. So, Joe, I would be surprised if Irv Smith was the pick in round one. I would imagine you would be surprised as well, right, Alex?
Yeah, at a position that's not in my top needs, at a guy that probably isn't quite worth that pick, I'd be pretty surprised.
All right, from Jesse Hernandez from West Palm Beach. If Devin White fell to number 8, would you personally trade your first 3 picks with the Lions to move up and take him? That's way rich. I'm assuming he's meaning swap the ones and then give the 2 and the first 3 is what I'm guessing he's meaning. Man, that's rich. I don't think I could do that.
No, and I wouldn't, because that means that Devin White's passed up Tampa Bay, and that probably means Devin Bush has a chance to fall, and I can trade up and give up less to get Devin Bush. Now, I think maybe Devin White's a better player, but the better value there is going to be Devin Bush. And I know why he said number 8, because there was that report that Detroit is open to trading out of 8, but it's going to cost a lot. It would take your second, and then more to go up to 8, and that's just too rich for me.
Yeah, 12 spots. I mean, if Colbert moves, I'm thinking, I don't know, what are you thinking? 5, 6 spots at most?
Yeah, I've kind of had 5 as the number I'm kicking around in my head.
All right, from Matt Johnson, this one's entitled Chase Winovich. Dear Dave and Alex, long-time listener, first-time phonetic speller. Why is it a reach to take Chase Winovich in the first round? I'm not saying I disagree, but all you talk about how flashy he is and even call him tinsel on tape. I guess what I'm asking is, what are his weaknesses that make him a day 2 or later guy? P.S. The debate you had about Devin Bush was some of the best this podcast has ever been. Thank you for that, Matt. And hopefully maybe you're sending me an email later on today talking about the Mack Wilson discussion as well, too. It's something that unfortunately it takes us this long to get to this point because we stay behind in this process and we want to whittle down the guys we think might be in play and then really go 8-9 games into the tape. So blame the process on why it takes so long to get on this, and maybe we'll have a few more of these kind of in-depth player discussions the rest of the way out there, but appreciate that. I think that debate Alex and I had with Devin Bush was also some of the best him and I have had on this podcast as well, too. He continues on, maybe Chase would be a good guy for the next one. Wink, wink. Thanks, Matthew Johnson, phonetically spelled. Look, I don't think it's so much that a reach as opposed to, I mean, you're up at 20. He didn't. One of the drawbacks with him is he didn't play on his feet hardly any, right?
Yes. Is that a deal breaker for you though?
No, it's not a deal breaker. I think the second thing is the whole age thing.
That's where I was gonna go.
I mean if the production's there and I have to throw him on the heap after 5 years, well then I have to throw him on the heap after 5 years. There's not a lot not to like about Chase Winovich. He's kind of. I mean, when push came to shove with Watt, I had Watt outside. Honestly, even though I mocked Watt at one point during the process as the Steelers' first-round pick, when push came to shove, I had Watt outside the first round. Not by much, but I had him outside the first round. So I would guess that's where I am on Winovich right now. I don't have him as a first round guy. I would have him more as a, I don't know, mid-second round guy. But, I mean, you turn on the tape and it's there, so I wouldn't so much call him a reach. It would just be it would be around the kind of the surprise, I guess, where I got with Watt. I wouldn't hate it,
I would like to take my victory lap and say I had TJ Watt in my final mock draft. So pat on the back for Alex.
Didn't Winovich primarily play on the left side too?
Yes.
Not that that's a deal breaker either. I mean,
but yeah, considering he's gonna be a rotational guy, he's gonna play both spots. So
right.
That's not. I think the fact he's a super senior and was he 24? He's 24.
He's right up around there, 23, 24. Doesn't he have a birthday coming up? Didn't we just discuss that already?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's 24. So that age, I know they've taken two seniors. I don't think Cam and Bud were that old. I'm pretty sure they weren't. So that's a factor, and I get it. I mean, I'm not saying that there's no chance it could be Winovich. He checks most of those boxes. It's clear they like Chase Winovich. But I compared it to Jesse Bates. And we talked about Jesse Bates. Oh, the Steelers really like this guy. Pro day dinner, underclassman production, position of need, and he ends up being a second-round pick to the Bengals. And that's just the vibe I get with Winovich. Is a guy that they like, but somebody that they might view as if he's there at 52, we turn in the card. We're not going to spend 20 on it, though.
Yeah, I just don't see it in the first round, but wean see. I mean, look, I think they like him.
Obviously, yeah, and with good reason.
I think they like him. I think a lot would have to happen to get to that point where you're taking him at 20 overall.
I think there is some worry about overall athletic profile with Winovich. I know he tested well, but there were some numbers that are concerning. A 30-inch vert is concerning. Overall, is he the product of a good scheme and being a really high effort and a technical player? And how much is that, is the lack of athleticism going to limit his ceiling, even though he's a technical guy? And that's maybe the concern with him. Is he maxed out, or is there room to grow?
I got one from Mathene. I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name. You should have included. I won't embarrass myself for you on that. He says, I love the podcast. Great discussion on Farrell the other day. Thank you. I know the Steelers say they take the best player on the board, but I think there are a lot more variables that go into the equation. They have to rate players within their position group and the position group as a whole. For instance, if Bush and Farrell are both available when the Steelers pick and both are rated about equally, they would have to look at the rest of the position group. Say Bush is rated higher than Farrell, but the Steelers like the inside linebacker class overall more than the outside linebacker class, and they think they can get a comparable player in another round, they would pass on Bush and take Farrell, knowing they can get a quality inside linebacker in the other rounds. What are your thoughts? Okay, you make a good argument there, but I'll go back to something that Kevin Colbert says or has said in the past. If it's close, then they go with more need, right? But if it's not close, I mean, if it's considerably not, and we have no idea what's close or not close,
right?
As far as Kevin Colbert and the team's grading scale and personality and some of the things that we just have no idea that they rank on. If it's close, then you go with the position of need. Now, you could say, Bud's in a – look, don't discount Farrell in the first round because of the fact that what do you have there? And I don't think you should look at it this way, but what do you potentially have at outside linebacker past – not only going into this past the draft, but after the 2019 season. I mean, is Bud going to be around? Chicolo? I mean, we don't even know what Ola is. We can pretend like we think we know what Ola is, but we don't know. So I still got that Farrell bias floating around in my head from watching that tape on him recently too. He's a hard kid not to like.
Yeah, I went back and listened to the Combine interview you talked about, and certainly, yeah, a good dude with a really fascinating story. To answer the question, yeah, absolutely. If anyone that says the Steelers will draft the best player available, that's just BS. I mean, that's not true. We know that's not true. There's a combination of things. As you mentioned, for me, it's always been, who's the best value and the best talent that intersects perfectly at position of need, at least when we're talking early rounds. Later rounds, it becomes more just best talent. But early rounds, it's all about the position of need. And we know that because when they drafted Mason Rudolph in the third round last year, they said they had a first-round grade on him. And so they drafted James Washington over Mason Rudolph, who I assume Washington probably did not carry a first-round grade on him. And so they chose James Washington. Let's assume he had the second-round grade over Mason Rudolph, who had the first-round grade. And that's because the position of need. So that's a clear-cut example of them choosing the player in the position over where the overall grade was at, and so we know that that's not true. There is some truth to it, of course, but the idea that they're going to look at just their board straight down, who has the highest grade will take this guy, just not true.
Speaking of edge, I know there's a name I forgot to get to. I'm later today, folks. Look, I don't blame you if you don't like clicking on some of those video links or whatnot. I'm going to be posting a contextualization on Brian Burns, and it might be for some other fan base to view at some point here. But you want to talk about a disruptive guy. A guy that make plays on tape, and the more I watch him and all like that, I think he's a better fit as a 4-3 base. But I mean, look, you can make him work. I think as a Steelers 3-4 outside linebacker, because he's got the athleticism there. Now I know there's some talk about can Brian Burns move inside. I'm not seeing that. I mean, I just don't see it. Why would you? Why would you take away from the guy what guy does best, crashing down from the end and rushing the passer from the edge to move him off the ball? I mean, to me, you're just taking him away from what he does great there. But you want to be impressed, watch, and this I took a deep dive at him yesterday at his tape, and I think you'll see this in his contextualization. You want to talk about a guy that no way makes it to 20. It should be him. He's got production off the chart, and he's a fun guy to watch. And my other question to you, and I'll let you add some comments on Brian Burns, what you know about him real quick, but is this a deeper inside off the ball for what the Steelers need? Is this a deeper inside linebacker class, or is it a deeper outside linebacker class?
I feel like it's a deeper inside off-ball class than edge. I think there's a couple good edge prospects, but they don't have they probably don't have many super standout guys at the top. I mean, there's guys I like Cleveland Farrell and you mentioned Brian Burns, but I think the depth at inside linebacker is probably better than at edge. Maybe we'll have to talk about Brian Burns, kind of one of our debating topics, because there's already things you just said I disagree with, and I think that'd be a good discussion.
All right. Well, we obviously don't have time.
Next podcast.
What was your biggest issue with it, real quick?
Well, I wrote the report on Brian Burns. So, I mean, I've spent some good time on him already. I'll have to go back and look because it's been a while. I think he can play 3-4 outside linebacker super well. I think he's one of the most athletic and comfortable guys.
I said you could make him work there.
You said 4-3 end, and you said maybe you can make. I think easily he can be a 3-4.
Okay.
No reservations about it at all. And I'll have to go through my notes again. But put on that Florida game against a top tackle, both of them, but especially right tackle Jawan Taylor. This dude struggled. I like Brian Burns. I see the upside. I see why people like him, but I'm not nearly as high on Brian Burns as most of the community is.
All right, fair enough. Well, maybe we'll have a little bit longer discussion about him. He's just impressive from what I've seen of him so far. All right, let's see here. What else do I have going on here? From Jake Messenger, Jake M. Hey, guys, really enjoy the in-depth breakdowns of draft prospects. Was wondering if you guys would consider doing something similar for James Washington's rookie season. Seems like there's a lot of unknowns or misconceptions about his performance last year, myself included. I think a tape breakdown detailing why he struggled, i.e. route running, not being on the same page as Ben, et cetera, as positives and negatives from last year. Expectations for this upcoming season would be very informative. Might be an interesting topic during the dead period between the draft and training. That's a perfect time, Jake, for us to do that. Let us get through the draft and all, and write us back in. After I get back from my trip in May, when we get into that June late May, June territory, and we'll see if we can have a longer discussion about James Washington there. From Blake Literal writes in, Busher Farrell. Hello, long-time listener, first-time emailer, Blake Literal. I'd take Bush. He said, I'd take Bush, but would be more happy with Farrell. My question is, what could be the biggest surprise of the draft in general, or just biggest Steelers surprise? Last year was a shock for us fans. Is there something you think Steelers could do in the draft that you hate? Oh, yeah. Take Mack Wilson in the first round. That would have me hollering. Like, take the player way too early, or take a player you don't see fit but they, for some reason, do. Thanks. I love listening to the podcast. Hopefully one day I can do what you guys do. All right, hit it, Alex.
Well, I'd take Bush over Farrell. I'm not sure why the reader would take Bush, but would be happier with Farrell. Then I would recommend taking Farrell in that scenario. What would surprise me? I don't know. It's tough to talk about surprises because then I wouldn't be surprised by it. I mean, taking a defensive lineman, taking like Jerry Tillery at 20 would be something kind of crazy, but I guess maybe within the realm of possibility.
What would you hate? Is there something you think
hate.
the Steelers could do in a draft that you hate?
I mean, generally, no, unless they did something totally off the wall, like an offensive lineman or something. But, I mean, that's not going to happen.
Don't speak in absolutes.
No, okay. Well, then there's something I would hate. I generally am not going to hate anything. There's stuff that I would be lower on. They'd take a corner, an outside corner, like Greedy. I would like the pick, but I just would question. Yeah, I'm just a nuanced guy, or I'm always going to be like, well, this is okay and this isn't okay. That's just how I roll.
All right, from Rodney Shookman. Thanks for reading my last email Friday. By the way, Dave, my last name is phonetically pronounced Shookman, and Krakra is pronounced cray-cray and short for crazy. How much would Yins pay for a tell-all book from Drew Rosenhaus, from TO to AB? Imagine the stories that dude must have. Yeah, I mean, look, I'd like that. I tell you what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for the Kevin Colbert.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, I hope I live long. I hope Kevin Colbert, when his days are done, I would love for him to write some memoirs or something about some of the things that happened and what went into the process. But you want to talk about a bestseller, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
he's not writing the book, though.
No, he's not. But I mean, it's fun to think about. Don't crush my dream on Friday.
Well, you can be his ghostwriter or something. Because I would love to. Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, Rosenhaus would be a cool book. I mean, he probably will write a book, but it's so going to be sensationalized that I feel like maybe some of it's going to be harder to buy. I mean, I'd love to read the Kevin Colbert book. Real quick.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, just to go back, someone mentioned it from the James Washington question. I wrote an article about 2 months ago on one step to take for James Washington. So it wasn't the deepest dive, but I did write about how he can improve for 2019.
All right, Taylor Carpenter writes in, David Alex, in response to your podcast question on who I'd rather have the Steelers draft between Cleveland Farrell. Do I keep calling him Colin Farrell?
No, I keep screwing up his last name. I keep saying Farrell and Farrell. I somehow get Cleveland right. I can't get his last name right, though. So that's me.
So you're shouldn't call him Colin Farrell, huh?
Yeah, yeah. We're two halves of a whole idiot.
Get used to it. You better learn how to pronounce that name, Alex.
I know. I somehow nailed Cleveland, and I keep getting Farrell and Farrell screwed up.
I'm telling you, 3 weeks from now, you better get ready.
Hey, I'm gonna be doing the victory laps if he's the pick.
All right.
I'm the one who talked about him.
Okay. All right, let's see. He says he's most definitely going with Devin Bush. Okay, I have watched both players extensively, and the biggest reason I would take Bush over Farrell is scheme fit. I think Bush is a plug-and-play player for our defense, and I think the Steelers would have to scheme around Farrell. Okay, Farrell's apparent lack of bend around the edge in the film I watched kind of turned me off of him being our first round selection. I think he best fits as a 4-3 in at the pro level. Okay, I mean if there is a knock on him, it is that edge. Okay, but I mean everything else is nice.
And hey, 4-3 guys got to bend too. I mean, really the difference we're talking about is minute. Hand up, hand down. Either way, you got to turn flat on the tackle. So there's not a huge difference there. As I said, yeah, I get the bend's not great, and that's gonna bring up the whole Bud 2.0 stuff, but because of the hand use, because of the pass rush plan, and because of the length and ability to create more space between the tackle and bending the edge, those are the reasons why I'd be more comfortable with, I'm going to screw up this last name again, with Farrell than Bud Dupree.
Speaking of Farrell, Rick Mooney writes in to let us know Farrell for sure. So there you go. You told me I was the only one going to be voting for Farrell. Rick Mooney thinks Farrell instead of Bush.
I saw that poll you did, though. It was Devin Bush all the way.
Yeah, what do Twitter users know? Let's see, Lenny from Cleveland. Dave, congrats on reaching 100 podcasts for this season. Look forward to Tuesday and Fridays and take my dog on a long walk. I also listen to the Calm Before the Storm podcast, but his are only 20 minutes long. Rookie. To my question, I really think the Steelers brass are playing possum this year with Bush. Remember a couple years ago when they took Mean Joe down to Baylor to see Billings? They passed on him. And look, I think Mean Joe lives down there. So maybe all of us read a little bit too much into Billings, Obviously, I mean, he went much later than what.
And there was some reported medical stuff, which we're never gonna know.
Right, we'll never live that down. All people remember is we had him at first round.
Yeah. We were wrong.
In the mock, in early mock. Look, I had you want to write one down to keep throwing at me. I had Ja'Kai Polite as my first round pick in my first mock draft right out of the chute. That's why I tell you, man, this is a process. It's amazing to look back at this process from going from the end of the season to where we are now to be able to talk in depth about some of these players, because literally come out of the season just where do I go? So look, we miss. We're not afraid to say that we miss, but it's part of the process, and that's why we get in depth in these things as more go on. He says they passed on him, and the Bengals ended up taking him. I think the interest lies with the edge rusher from Clemson. Do you think they would draft Metcalf if he's there? I liked your mock, but really think they need to grab a receiver in top 2 rounds. Love the show. Look, it's fair enough to think that they probably need to grab a receiver in top, second. First 2 rounds, something like that. And Metcalf, where are you on Metcalf, Alex?
Well, obviously, Tomlin Colbert Pro Day kind of really hurts those chances. I mean, I like Metcalf, but I feel like he's the Z type that he's going to be, because there's no bend, there's no change of direction with him. I think to play that X, I'm worried about separation skills. I think he's going to be a throw it up and let him go get it kind of guy. What about AJ Brown from his teammate? If he were to fall at 52, which I don't think is likely, but that'd be really interesting. And well, again, I don't think it's likely for the first round, but I think AJ Brown is almost for Pittsburgh a more attractive prospect who can play inside out than DK Metcalf.
All right, stop me after this one. Podcast questions, over-unders. Matt Smith. I'll keep this short and sweet with 3 over-unders for you to debate. Over-under, 1.5 offensive players selected with the 4 day 1, day 2 picks. So in other words, the first 4 picks, will they have over or under 1.5 offensive players selected?
Over 2.
Really? You think 2 of their first 4 are going to be offense?
That's why I did my mock.
All right, I'm going to go under just to be different here. I think they grab a wide receiver and the other 3 are defense. Over under, 1.5 combined players selected from Michigan and Notre Dame. That's a great question. That's a very good question. Over under, Alex?
1.5 was the line?
Right, for Michigan and Notre Dame players combined.
I thought I escaped all the betting stuff when the season was over. I'm going to say under. I'll say 1.
Yeah, it's a great question because they're at Michigan and Notre Dame Pro Day, and you look at the kind of guys that look. If they don't get them in the first 4 picks, though, I mean, the odds are that you're going to escape out. I think the logical answer there, though, is to take the under there. That maybe one from one of those 2 schools there. Over under 0.5. Iowa tight end still on the board when the Steelers pick at number 20. I guess he's saying... Yeah,
Fant and Hawkinson. You sold me on Fant dropping a little bit. I'll say that Hawkinson's off the board, Fant's still there, so the over is what I'll be taking.
Right. I'll take the over as well, too. All right, stay lit, fam, Matt says, and we started with lit, we'll end with a lit. How's that? As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow the great Alex Kozora at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast at gmail.com. Do you like those in-depth breakdowns we're doing on Bush? What did you think about our thoughts on Mack Wilson? Let us know, theterriblepodcast at gmail.com. Yes, I am efforting Dave T. Hopefully next week we'll have Dave T on the show either Tuesday or Friday. You can make a donation to the site by going to Steelers or to the podcast, going to SteelersDepot.com, hit that donate button up right navigational bar. And as always, we have a subscription for ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com for $25 for 1 calendar year. Happy Friday, everybody. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.